I want to talk about the ethics of artificial intelligence. Now, AI can bring enormous benefits to society, but there are also lots of risks associated with it, and we really need to understand what those risks are. Now, the first consideration is the impact that artificial intelligence will have on not only changing the nature of some jobs, but also replacing some jobs. We're already aware that with, for example, self-service checkouts in supermarkets that have replaced lots of people working on the tills. We've got robots operating in many factories. AI, for example, could replace taxi drivers with driverless cars. And also, as another example, artificial intelligence could change certain jobs, like for doctors, that they use and rely on artificial intelligence to make diagnosis of diseases. The second consideration is the impact on the environment. Now, artificial intelligence need data centers, and data centers themselves require a huge amount of energy to run all those servers that are holding those huge amounts of data. Additionally, with all that e-waste potentially when servers become obsolete, that can become a problem and how to deal with all the waste. However, those data centers and artificial intelligence can benefit climate change research and help us give us insights into understanding more about this area. The third consideration is that artificial intelligence can inherit biases from the data, making it unfair. So the data that used to train the artificial intelligence is biased. And for example of this is that it's shown to be less accurate at recognizing people with darker skin tones because it's been trained mostly on images of people with lighter skinned faces. Now, this is a problem because it makes it harder to distinguish between certain groups of people. And there's been cases where people have been misidentified by the police and been arrested just on misidentification. So that is a serious problem. Other areas might be if you're using artificial intelligence to work out who to employ, because men traditionally have got into senior roles in big companies. There's a big bias there towards men. So there's an issue with using AI to determine whether to employ someone or not, since it biases men over women. The fourth factor is that AI could be misused for surveillance or for creating autonomous weapons. So governments and corporations are already using artificial intelligence for surveillance, and corporations tend to use it because they just basically want to sell you more stuff. Governments use it as a means of control, and they're using face identification and CCTV as well to monitor people's activities. It could also be used to develop autonomous weapons like drones that have the capacity to make their own battlefield decisions. Now, you can understand what the implications of that might be, and it would fundamentally have an impact on warfare and changing warfare. Additionally, companies collect lots of personal data about you, often without your knowledge, really, and the consent, possibly, and they often share that data with third parties. So what companies need to do, they need to ensure there's no data breach of the data they collect about you. But also the other problem is that as a user, you lose control over your data. You don't really know what data companies have on you. And that's really problematic, potentially, the lack of transparency associated with that. Now, AI needs data. It needs lots of data, and quite often sources and the AIs are trained on copyrighted data. So that includes images, text, and videos that the artificial intelligence has no authority to use. And there's a lack of transparency about which data have been used to train these models, to train the artificial intelligence. And so there's a little bit of an area there where potentially copyright has been infringed. So AI can have enormous benefits, but there are also risks associated with it. What I want you to do now is to discuss that as a class in pairs and see what conclusion you come to.